All right, welcome everybody. We're back with another episode of the 80/20 Rockstars podcast. It has been a little while since you've seen me. I'm very excited to be back. We have a super exciting guest today. She is, I want to say, a jack of all trades. I've looked at your bio. She's the executive leader of KW Commercial. She runs this highly successful real estate team out of San Antonio. I read some of your other bios. You're in a lot of different things. You're a professional pianist, correct?
Yeah, that's
And
right.
you have a lot of hobbies, which I'm really interested in learning about. So her name is Cynthia Lee, and Cynthia, welcome. Thank you for being on.
Thank you, Rodney, and I'm so glad to be here. Always enjoy and appreciate the opportunity to spread what we are doing with KW Commercial and just really the opportunities in general as you, the listener, who could get involved, whether it's coming over to be an agent with us or just getting involved with the opportunities, the deal opportunities that we have. Especially in the next year. So a lot of great things happening. Can't wait to talk about it.
Awesome. Me neither. And so just for those who haven't or have been following my channel, you've seen mostly residential investing videos and houses and showings and all that. For those of you who don't know, I've switched to doing commercial full-time this year. We're actually getting to a lot of exciting things. Commercial is not an easy thing to learn, I think, which I'm curious to talk about with you, Cynthia. But now we've got getting a little bit of traction. We're starting to buy self-storage facilities. So that's what my life is looking like right now. So this is part of why I brought Cynthia on, because she leads KW Commercial, which, by the way, is the only female-led commercial brokerage in the US, right? And I think we're one of the top 3 or 5 right now. So
yes, and I'll just give you a little bit of history behind that. So as most of you know, or maybe know, it's been decades in the commercial real estate industry where we've been known as the good old boy network. You know, commercial real estate's usually the good old boys, right? And one thing that Gary Keller said about a year or so ago is he said, I really want us to focus on developing commercial. We've already mastered residential. Keller Williams is #1 in the world globally, for residential real estate and training. He said, I want to focus now my attention on commercial. And he said, and I want to do it differently. I don't want us to be like everybody else. That's not who we are. He said, we are visionaries, and Keller Williams is also known to be a highly disruptive company, meaning that not only do we have a big vision, but we're not afraid to execute on it. And we're not afraid to do the things that a lot of other companies would never dare to do. And so Gary said, I'm going to make a splash right out the gate, and I want to put 2 females in charge of leading the charge in relaunching KW Commercial and making it the disruptive brand really for years to come and for decades to come. So that's where he started, was with the leadership. So you do have 2 females, myself and Alicia Shepard, pretty much handling all the strategy and day-to-day and everything moving forward, all the plans that we have moving forward. So we've done a lot in the past year. But even more to come over the next year. And you'll hear more about it in the mainstream. If you're sitting there thinking, yeah, I don't hear much about you guys, KW Commercial, whatever. There's a reason for that. We have purposely not gone public with everything that we have changed in the past year, because there's still a few major pieces that are coming into play over the next 6 months and 6 months to a year. And once we have those in place, then we're going to, as I like to say, shout from the mountaintops of, hey guys, check out everything that we're doing. Our goal is to be that far ahead of the competition that it'll be pretty tough for them to catch us. So there is a long-term strategy in place that we are currently executing on.
That's awesome. And I think I couldn't be more excited personally, I just like I like what I've been learning in commercial and the type of people I've been dealing with and all that. But like you said, it's super old school. It is there's not a lot of people, not nearly as many people doing it as there are residential agents, and it's very old school. Like the average age of a commercial agent, how they operate, the lack of technology they use, it's like kind of shocking to me, actually.
Yeah, and also, for us, Keller Williams really prides itself on being a diverse and inclusive company. The #1 reason why people come to Keller Williams in general is for our culture. It's a very welcoming, warm, family-like culture where we all help each other. We all want to thrive as entrepreneurs, but yet still have the support, from a local market center or even on the national level. And so what we've done is we have parlayed that diversity and inclusiveness into KW Commercial. And how we've done it is by offering the only comprehensive ground up education in commercial real estate. So in years past, when I got licensed and I decided to change over to commercial, I started in residential, just to let you guys know. And I got recruited away by an institutional shop to do commercial real estate for them. And it was tough. Back then, as a female, it was tough to get somebody to return my phone call. I was new to the business, new to commercial real estate, and I was a female on top of that. So the only solution I had at that time was to go get my CCIM designation. And everybody in my brokerage there, they were laughing. They're like, you know nothing about commercial real estate, yet you're going to go attempt the most difficult designation that exists. Only 7% of agents worldwide have a CCIM designation.
Wow.
And I said, yep, I'm going to do it, because how else am I going to learn? Well, CCIM is more investment driven. Obviously, you guys probably know about CCIM, and it was an amazing education. I have to say that once I got those letters behind my name, all of my phone calls got returned. So that was a game changer for me. However, we were still lacking, though, the ground up education. In commercial real estate, it can easily take 3 years to really ramp up your business. It can take a long, long time to get into productivity. And that's why we're such a small niche. We're just a small unit or world in our industry, because not a lot of people can make it unless they have some sort of backup income, some secondary form of income that can pay the bills while they build up their commercial business. Whereas with residential, you can usually, close on a house and do all that within about 45 days. That's awesome. So we said, okay, well, how can we shorten that time to get an agent into production, while at the same time create more diversity and inclusiveness? So we did it through education. It worked on the residential side, and that's why so many people, when they get licensed for residential, they come straight to Keller Williams, because everyone knows that we are the training ground, right? We are the foundation for getting into real estate. And we said, let's be that for commercial. So we just launched back in March 2022 a program called Nucleus for KW Commercial that Alicia Shepard actually wrote. It's her baby. And it is comprehensive. It is intense. And Rodney, I don't know, did you take Nucleus, or have you taken it yet?
I haven't. I started, I think, the first course, but I've honestly, the only thing I've been focusing on is like cold calling people, which is working.
It's intense. Yeah. Right. It's not for the faint of heart, but it's everything, right? It teaches you how to set up your database. It teaches you how to lead generate. It teaches you about all the asset classes. So it's an intense 8-week program, and each program is 6 hours long. So it's an intense education, but at least it exists, right? And we do this on demand, and we also do live group training. So you can go back and watch it as many times as you want. And then from there, once you complete Nucleus, then we push you into a group mentorship program, so you can put into practice everything that you learn. And what we have discovered is that we are able to get most commercial agents, depending on what they specialize in, and again, most who are brand new or generalists to start, right? We are able to get them into production within about 3 to 6 months, versus 1+ years. And that right there is sustainable, right? We can get some of these smaller deals closed, get some money in their pockets, and get them off their feet, get them going, and get them excited, get that momentum there that's going to keep them in commercial real estate and want to do more and more and more. So we're already seeing that work. And again, we haven't even had Nucleus in place for a year. So we're really excited to see where all of this goes. And just for your knowledge, Nucleus is, yes, while it is a part of KW Commercial, it comes with your membership. You can still sign up for Nucleus, even if you're not a member of Keller Williams. So we do offer that platform outside of KW. The difference is that you're going to pay retail price for it, and it also is not going to have some exclusive content just for KW Commercial. So that's the difference there. But we certainly were not going to leave anybody out when it comes to education, because we felt that was just so needed in the commercial real estate industry. So that, I would say, in itself, if we didn't do anything else and make any other improvements with KW Commercial, that alone is a legacy. Yeah, that alone is going to help our industry perform better. We're going to recruit more agents in. And I'll give you one last example before we move on from that topic. In my division in San Antonio, so I lead our commercial division in San Antonio, Texas. We have 50 commercial agents in our division. And I'm so proud to say that just a few weeks ago, I looked at our roster because we've been running so hard. I hadn't even thought to look at the roster, right? I looked at the roster and I counted how many minorities we had in our roster. More than half of our membership in my commercial division is a minority. And
Wow.
I need to look at what the percentages of women, but it's getting close to being half and half for women versus men. So for us, that tells us we're doing something right? We're on the right path in that we are attracting in a lot of people who really want to learn commercial, but never felt that they had that pathway, or they never felt that they would be accepted. So you come over to KW Commercial, we don't care who you are, what you've been, whatever it is. You have a passion to do commercial real estate. We will teach you how to do it.
There's so much to unpack there. I'm trying to think where to start. So, and I'm one of those people, by the way. I think I got really comfortable doing residential for a long time, but I really should have really jumped into commercial 4 or 5 years ago. It's only recently I finally am we got to burn the bridges. I don't want to do, just from burnout during COVID and all that, I finally decided to do it. But for those of you who aren't familiar with some of the few things you said, and you can fill in the gaps here, there's a couple designations in commercial real estate. The one that you just mentioned, CCIM, only a small percentage of the agents have it. There's another one called SIOR for office and industrial agents. Those are the two top. It takes most people, I think, 1 to 3 years to get them. It's very costly, and you really become, you go real in depth with learning about how commercial real estate works all generally, and then with each asset class. So it's a very important designation. And that's very cool to hear that, because I've been having the same thoughts. I was going to start the CCIM class in January because it goes with the calendar year, and it's cool to hear that you started at the beginning, because I like learning, and it seems like clearly it's helped you, correct? You said
yes.
Yeah.
And I'm a big advocate for CCIM as well. It is a fantastic organization, quality agents in there, wonderful network of agents and family. That's another environment that has a very family-like feel to it. And so I try to stay as involved as I can with CCIM, at least on the local level. But if you're able to get your CCIM designation, I still highly recommend that. So I think that for anyone new, the pathway, in my opinion, would be at least do nucleus first, get your foundation, go through some of that group mentorship, and then start working on your CCIM. Because you got to think about this. And I don't know what the percentage is. I'm sure there's a number out there. I need to learn what it is. But there are quite a few commercial agents who went through all of the practical courses, for CCIM, the practicum, I think that's the word, right? All of the classes, but they never got their portfolio put together. That's probably the hardest part of CCIM is that you have to have a minimum, and maybe the requirements have changed, but I want to say it's 20 commercial transactions or a certain amount of volume to qualify to take the test, to take the exam, to get your designation. So a lot of people fall short of that because by the time they take all the classes, they get excited, but then they get to that portfolio part of it and they're like, oh, shoot, I don't have 20 transactions. And by the time they work their way up to that, they've long forgotten about it, right? But it's always in the back of their mind. It's still in the back of their mind. And I tell everyone, I'm like, look, even though you took those classes years ago, all you got to do is take the pre-exam classes, the prep courses for taking the CCIM exam, and it'll all come back to you. So don't let that be a deterrent. If you are listening right now and you have taken all of the courses, or you just need one more, still go for it. It's worth doing it for sure.
Okay, that's good to know. I didn't know that you could. It's kind of like you take a little renewal and then you can jump right back into it. So for those who don't know anything about commercial real estate, actually, I'm curious to just understand, what is a day in the life for you look like? Because you're running KW Commercial as a whole. You've got a real estate team, and you focus on retail leasing, correct?
Yes.
Which I'm curious to. I don't do any leasing, it feels like a whole different animal. But what does a day in the life for you look like?
That is a complicated question, my friend. But here's the lesson that I hope everybody takes away from this. It's this simple word called leverage. It's having the right people on your staff or the right people around you who can help take what Gary Keller calls the 80% off of your plate. Okay, so you have to look at your day and look at your business or whatever it is it is that you do. And this applies to anybody in any industry, okay, in your life, right? It's the 80-20 rule, all right? 80% of what you are doing is stuff that you probably don't need to be working on. What we want to know is what's that 20%? What is the 20% that's going to keep you and your business moving forward, generating, profitability, whatever that looks like? That's that 20%. So once you figure out what your 20% is, then you've got to find the leverage of who can help you with the 80% that you should not be doing. So here's an example. When you first get into real estate, residential, commercial, whatever it may be, you have no money, right? You got to do everything yourself. And I think it's good. I think everybody should learn every aspect of the job. No matter what you do, you really should learn every aspect of the job, because that way, if somebody's out, you can easily jump in, you can fill in. I know every aspect of my job, my entire team. I know all of them. Now, my group, they're better at me at spreadsheets. They're better than I am at a lot of other things, but at least I can do it, right? And so it was for me getting that leverage in place to help me juggle, all of these. I wear so many hats now. And then figuring out also what you love to do. So I don't know about you, Rodney, but there has to be something in your life that you're like, oh, this has been on my task list forever. And it keeps migrating day to day to day to day, right? And paperwork is an example, right? We all have to do our own documents and paperwork when we get into real estate. But does that ultimately make you money? Yeah, sure, inadvertently. But in a day-to-day situation, you sitting behind a desk, writing up a contract, is that the best use of your time? No. The best use of your time is you're a sales agent, right? You need to be out there lead generating, talking to prospects, meeting with clients, whatever it is that you have, that the face-to-face, the relationship, the sales aspect of it, all of that 80% needs to go to somebody else. So it's working your way up to where you earn the right to hire that administrator. And so many agents make that mistake, myself included, of making their next hire an agent. No, your next hire should, apart from you, the next person you hire should always be an assistant, an admin, an administrator. So just remember that, the 80-20 rule. Your next hire, leverage, get that 80% off your plate. So I've gotten the 80% off my plate. Now I'm able to spin these other plates, right? Between my role with KWRI, the corporate office, my role as managing director with the division, and then the rainmaker of my retail broker team. So it's absolutely possible. And I'm doing everything that I love to do. Sure, there are some things that still I'm like, I wish I didn't have to do it, but I'm the only person who can do it. So it's never going to be perfect, but I'm in a much better place. And if I can make one more comment on this, because this can also apply to any industry, any business person, is that when you are looking for leverage, you got to take the time to get the right person. So we always say you want to get the right person in the right seat. And I'm going to be completely honest. I'm awful at it. Okay. So for years, I struggled with finding the right people because I was always so busy and desperate. I'm like, that person, I like them. You know what? Yep. They feel good. Come on. I'm not joking when I tell you that I had my babysitter work for me. My babysitter, like I've called her in and said, I just need somebody to input data. Just input data. Can you go do this? Can you go put a sign? Can you do, whatever that may be? Because I didn't take the time to get the right talent in the right place. So what I came to realize that I was the problem. So there has to come a point where if you're still struggling with something, you got to be able to look at yourself and say, am I the problem? I went through several virtual assistants. I went through several admins, and I have a really healthy, good work environment. You can ask my staff that. The problem is that I was not taking the time to not only hire the right person, but train them. So I am that, I think this is in that movie Office Space or whatever, where it's like, okay, you want to come work for me? Great. Here's your first day. Here you go, right? Boom. Good luck with that, right? You can figure it out. It doesn't work that way. You have to really sit with somebody. And for me, I don't have the patience, nor do I have the time. So what I did, I'm going to just tell you, I hit the easy button and I hired a third-party vendor that came in and they did the hiring for me. And then what they did was they looked at my current structure of my team, of my employees, and they said, you got great people, but they're in the wrong seats. So we redid all of the roles and responsibilities, shuffled them around, So we redid the org chart, my organizational chart within the business, and voila, everybody's happy. Like everyone's in the right. It was such an eye opener for me that I actually did have some good people in there. They just weren't doing the right jobs, and they're so much happier now, right?
This recently?
And this third party vendor also did all of the interviewing. They teed this was for my virtual assistants. They teed everybody up. I got to select from 3. And then guess what they did on top of that? They trained them. They trained them for me. So I didn't have to do any of it. And yes, was it an investment of money? Oh yeah. Was it an investment of time? A little bit, just a little bit. It was not terrible. Was it worth every penny? And am I doing more business today because I spent the money on the front end to get that done right? Yes. I look back at over a decade of just fumbling through getting the right people in there, and all of the money and time that I lost having to retrain and start over again and then post the job at me. You know, if I'd had the foresight, that's what I'm telling you right now, just take my advice. Don't fumble through it and don't rush through it. Either hire somebody to help you do it, or you got to take the time to get it right. So now, as of today, Rodney, that is how I'm able to juggle 3 jobs happily. And I have time off. You know, I have my weekends off. I have my nights off. I come home and I watch Everybody Loves Raymond. Eat ice cream.
That right there that you just said, you still have your time and weekends off. That's the punchline, I think. So we've been, yeah, it's 100% the punchline. And we've been going through the same challenges. Like, you know, I think we're still working on getting the right people in the right places and just it's hard for me to let go. I just literally this week was the first time that instead of putting a listing under my name, we put it under somebody else's name. And it's it's kind of weird, but I kind of like it. Like, wow, I'd rather make half or a little less than half. And yeah, I'll train you for the first couple, but after I don't have to do anything. I can just sit and I don't know. I'm a weirdo who loves cold calling and just getting in front of people, like you said, but it's a beautiful thing. So
that's good. And I think that you hit on a really good point, Rodney. It's letting go. So I have the same problem too, especially in the beginning, because I'm like, look, nobody else knows how to do it. I'll just do it myself. I was like this even in school. I'm like, oh, forget it. I'd be put in groups. I'm like, you don't get it. I'll handle it. I'll take care of it. When you hire the right people, it's easy to pass things off. So now it's funny. Now I'm like, oh, who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? And I mean, I just look at them and go, okay, here's everything that needs to get done. Who wants to take it off of my plate? They love it, right? Because that's what their role is. And so it becomes a lot easier to let go. You have to just get over that hump. You have to just trust, but you also have to have the right people in place too.
Awesome. So quick question, just specifically about what you do in retail real estate. For someone like me who's always done sales, right? How does the cycle, or a sales cycle, whatever you call it, different from doing leasing versus sales? Because I've always, it's easy for me to picture, you know, like I'm always finding motivated sellers, and then when I find someone, they're going to want to list their property, hopefully, and then we're going to sell it and make a commission. It's different working with, you know, I know you work with like large companies, some very large retail companies like Domino's and some large food chains, right? So like, but the timing is different. Like, when are they deciding to look for new spaces? How in the world? I just don't have any clear sense of like how that works and how that differs from sales. And I'm very curious.
I think that's
like
actually that's a great question. It's a really, really, really good question, because I think a lot of people who get into real estate, their brain just automatically goes to, I'm going to do sales, right? I'm going to list properties, or I'm going to bring the buyer. Right. And then the same in residential, right? Because if you're a hybrid, or you're coming from the residential side, you don't want to do leases because you don't make any money in residential on leases. But leasing and commercial can actually be quite lucrative. And especially if you get some of the bigger deals, and it doesn't even have to be 100,000 square foot building. I've made a lot of money on 10,000 square feet, because there's several variables that come into play when calculating a commission. It's based on the square footage, right? It's based on how much that rent is, the base rent, and then it's based on the term. So there are concepts out there and businesses out there that will sign 10 plus year terms. So when you multiply that by 10, that can equal quite a bit of money. And so with leasing, I think it's easiest to start from just kind of my backstory, which is when I got into commercial real estate, I did landlord rep. Okay. I leased office space. So it's important that you, first of all, figure out which asset class you want to work in. I love office. So even though now I specialize mostly in retail, I still do some office. But what I discovered throughout that process is that I don't prefer to be on the landlord side. That's just not my personality. And you want to know why? It's something just as simple as this. I did not want to have to put a spreadsheet together and present to a landlord at the same time every single week. That was just boring to me.
Really?
Oh no, it's ridiculous, right? It's ridiculous. But I didn't want to have to answer to anybody. I wanted to be in control, meaning that, I joke about this, but I wanted to be, the sexy girlfriend, right? The prom queen or whatever, but everybody's wooing us because we have all the tenants. Landlords need tenants to fill their buildings. So what do? They come after the tenant rep brokers. And tenant rep brokers, just if you don't know this, make more money, the higher commission than the landlord rep. Why? Why would that be? Because the landlord rep is on defense, meaning that they get a lot of calls directly to them, right, from prospects. Whereas the tenant rep, you have to be what we call a hunter. So you can't be afraid to go out there and try to find the business, to find the prospect, to help them put them in a space. And for that, in Texas, at least in Texas, it's different in some states, but for the most part, we get 4% of the commission, whereas the landlord rep gets 2%. Now, in some states, it's 3 and 3, so it's an equal split. But either way, it's still negotiable, right? It's still negotiable. And so with leasing, I ended up deciding that I like retail. So you're going to laugh because if you're in commercial real estate, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, she's like doing what nobody wants to do. Tenant rep in retail is a very rare breed, right? Rodney, you know that, right?
Yeah.
But who actually wants to do that? Why? Because it's a pain. You got to really be a hunter. You have to be able to get out in the trenches and find the clientele. But not only that, retail, you have to be analytical. And you have to be able to look at a shopping center or a retail building, whatever it may be, from about 1,000 different angles. Okay. So it's not like office. And I'm not saying that there isn't thought that goes into office, but for the most part, a lot of businesses that are just seeking office space, they don't need visibility. They don't care if they have to make a left-hand turn into the office building. They don't care about a lot of these things, right? They don't care if they have a sign outside on the monument or the pylon. In retail, all of those details count, and all of those details can make or break a brand. And what's interesting is that with some concepts, this is where you have to understand analysis and data, is there are concepts that can actually be in what I call the armpit of a shopping center, like where nobody really sees them. They're kind of hidden in that corner, but as long as they're surrounded by their friends, meaning co-tenants that they all run together, they all play, they go well together, they'll do great. They'll hit it out of the park, okay? But there are concepts that if they aren't visible to the street, the main road where everybody's driving by or turning into that center, they're dead in the water if they don't have that visibility. So it's figuring out and understanding the concept, the retail concept, what makes them successful, what makes them thrive, and then finding the real estate that actually satisfies those requirements. It sometimes can be like finding a needle in a haystack. So that's where the data and analysis, those two things come into play. And the person who has the data is king. I'm just going to tell you that. They say cash is king in retail, data is king. And I'm proud to say that we actually have a very cool, it's called Recon Analytics, a very cool analytical platform and company that we are partnered with and to supply us all of that data. So, and then the niche on top of that is that we do franchising. So you keep hearing me talk about national brands. We represent, we're the master broker of 15 national concepts. And then we also do a lot of multi-unit development for other brands. So that's what we've made our names. We've made a name for ourselves in multi-unit. So we have the strategy. We understand when you have, let's say, a franchisee come into a market and they purchase 5 licenses, right? So they need to do 5 locations. We can tell them exactly where they need to go in that city and which location they need to open first, second, third, fourth, fifth. Like, what does that whole strategy look like? So that's really, at the end of the day, we're a very specialized group, but we get a ton of business because in franchising, they're always awarding licenses and they're always under a deadline to close, right? And to get into a space. They can't linger. They're on a franchise agreement deadline. So that's where for leasing, for me, it works great because at least I know I'm going to get paid usually within 6 months to a year. At least get that first check 6 months to a year from the start of the lease. Yeah.
Interesting. That was probably one of the most thorough answers I've ever been given. Like, I think, again, for anyone who's not in commercial real estate, even it's when you're in residential real estate, I think the competency is like usually around the local area. In commercial, I've been doing this for, I don't know, let's call it almost a year, and like only focusing on in just warehousing and self-storage. There's so much to know. I didn't know 90% of what you just told me. It all makes a lot of sense. And my one question I had is, I'm assuming you're focusing on franchising because it's repeat business, I would imagine. But that was very
it is to get to land a franchise, to land a brand where you actually are their representative, the brand's representative is the pinnacle in retail. Apart from being able to represent a big box chain, there's a lot of money in that, right? There's a ton in that. But really to represent a brand, a national brand, that's a huge deal because it's very, very difficult to get your foot in the door. But once you get your foot in the door and you prove yourself and you do a good job at it, and you are able to maintain the integrity of the brand and also set that franchisee up for success, you marry those two, and they'll keep sending you business. They just keep sending you business. But I do want to go back to your comment about the self-storage. So I will tell you this, that when we talk about data and analytics, apart from office space, okay, I'm going to say apart from office, most other asset classes require some sort of analytics. And with self-storage, I actually have a young lady on my team who worked in self-storage. She was on the real estate team for an actual self-storage brand. So she came in and we learned a lot from her about that. But the analytics still come into play because you have to know where self-storage is actually needed. You know, it's not, I would love to say if you build it, they will come. Yeah, they'll come eventually, right? But don't you want to hit a home run right out the gate? So you want to make sure that you have the placement in the right, that self-storage in the right place where people are driving by it, or it's, there are different elements that you can look at in terms of that. And that right there, my friend, can set you apart, especially when you're going on listing appointments or you're up against a competitor to get a client or a prospect for self-storage. If you can present that data and just say, hey, look, here's how we look at it, the angles that we come from, all that nitty gritty, I can guarantee that will help a lot in landing that business.
Absolutely. Like, I personally will be doing that. If I'm doing that kind of research specifically for self-storage, it's going to be for us to make an offer on something and do a product ourselves. Like, as far as sales purposes, I focus generally on warehouses, which is just a whole different set of, it's not just the nuances are different. Like, it's just about how close you are to whatever highway it is or whatnot. And then how's the building laid out? What's the column span and the heights and all that? And what kind of electric? So like, it's a different subset, but yeah, I agree. It's very self-storage is 1, 3, 5 miles. How many people, what's their income? What's the per square foot of storage that's already in the area? What absorption can you expect? It's like different set of analytics. It's all, but the cool thing I think overall is just that you can choose something, whatever you happen to like, and you can just, once you get really good at that one thing, and you start with just working for one person or one company or whatever, and then you grow as you've done. So
that's right.
The last question on this. So a lot of the franchises and companies you're working with, is it primarily in Texas or all over the place?
They're all over.
Okay.
They're based everywhere.
Gotcha.
So in franchising, it is also a small world, believe it or not. And a lot of the franchisees talk to each other, brand to brand. A lot of franchisees are operators for multiple brands. You'll hear that like, oh, I have, an HTO, and I also have a Chick-fil-A, and I also have this, and I have that. They all have their own little circles, right? Or their little social media groups that they all chit chat on. And so that's how we've also been able to land a lot of businesses, that we perform well for one franchisee, right? And then you got to always ask, hey, who else do you know? Who
Mm.
else can we help in your company? Within that concept, who else do you know is about to sign a franchise agreement, or maybe somebody who just signed and they're struggling finding real estate? So it's just asking a simple question like that, and they're happy to connect you because you did such a great job with them. They then go out and they promote you. So that's the easiest way to get started. Is you got to just get one franchisee, and then it just starts to build from there. The better you perform, the more clients you will get, and it just keeps spidering out like that.
Awesome. So what do you think just generally with just jumping to, because you go all around the country, and I think you have a pretty deep perspective of like what people, not just commercial agents, but like the real estate industry is changing a lot, right? Market's changing, some, especially in commercial, some of the classes have like taken a dive during COVID. What do you think is like the biggest, or what are some of the biggest challenges that most agents are seeing right now? Like, is it they're not consistently doing what they're supposed to be doing their 20%? Are they not systematizing? Is it belief? Is it like, what are the trends you're seeing recently?
I would say being prepared. I would say being unaware that we are in a shift. So even though things might feel okay in your world, I mean, if you don't, let's just say you don't pay attention to the news or whatever, or you don't read any trade magazines or whatever, you're just living your life. Everybody's noticed that gasoline prices are up, right? My grocery bill is way up, right? Yep. My energy bill is 30% up. So just noticing that your bills are a lot higher than they used to be, that should set off an alarm bell that you need to be paying attention to what's occurring in the economy, okay? And I think that a lot of us, and I mean, I'm guilty too, sometimes I don't want to know, right? I just want to go home and unplug. I don't want to know what's going on in the world. I want to just take a break from all the madness, at times, right? But you can't. You got to have at least a general idea of what's about to occur. And I will say that one thing, or one real big reason why I really love being at Keller Williams is that Gary Keller is not only a visionary, but he is also an expert when it comes to real estate forecasting. He is somebody who follows the trends. He follows the stock market. He follows everything every single day. Just for your knowledge, he's the first one in the office, and he's the last one to leave almost every day. This is a man who could be retired right now, living on an island, drinking pina coladas. But he's so passionate about real estate and improving the industry in every way possible that he eats, sleeps, and breathes it, okay? So he told our company, everybody in our company, all the agents and everybody, it was like at the beginning of the year, January, so it's been almost a year. Way back then, he said, we are in a shift, and we're looking around going, we don't see anything really happening. Everything seems to be okay, right? He said, start preparing. You got to start preparing right now. You got to cut your budgets 40%. That's a lot, right? Especially when we weren't really seeing too many big, changes at that time. And so this whole year has been coaching everybody. You've got to get prepared. If you're used to lead generating, let's just say I'm going to make up a number. Let's say 20 phone calls a day. That's your lead gen. You need to double it. So he essentially said, whatever you're doing right now, you got to double that effort, and you've got to get back to the basics. You have to go back old school. You got to cold call. You got to door knock. You got to go talk to people. You got to grab them. You cannot expect the business to just come to you, because we are in a shift. And guess what? He was right. Because what are we in right now? We're in a shift. And they're predicting, Bloomberg predicted or has said that there is with 100% certainty that we will be in a full recession in 2023. Okay. So if you're not prepared, don't panic. You still have some time, but you better start now. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing that we're seeing with agents right now, is those who are struggling, they're not prepared. They're not making that effort. They're not putting the effort in to make it happen. And I know I can say that with certainty, that it is possible to still make money and be successful in a recession, because I've done it. You got to just dig deep. You got to get back in the trenches. I was talking to a top residential agent just a few weeks ago out of Austin. And I said, how are you doing? How are things going? He was like, you know what? I'm going back to the basics. He said, I'm on the leaderboard with all of my other people on my team. I'm right there with them. I'm doing the cold calling. He said, I am back in my business because that's what it takes. And that's the mark also of a great leader. So you've got to just get prepared, and you can do well. So don't panic. Don't freak out like, oh, we're going to lose all this money and we're going to be poor and broke and all these things. Yeah, you will be if you don't put the effort in. You just don't expect it to come to you. Put the effort in. You will be just fine.
Yeah, that's well said. I think there's always a lag time, whether it's months or half a year or a year. Like, I think, by the way, aren't we already in a recession? Hasn't already been two quarters of whatever recession means anyways. But I think I'm starting to see too, just even with, like, for example, we bought a bunch of houses over the past 5 years. We're selling like every single one of them right now to go and to invest in these commercial projects. And even in the past few months, like, it's at least in the neighborhoods that we're in, like a lot of the transitioning, I'm sure this is the same in any city. When you're in the transitioning neighborhoods around the edge and all that, and stuff starts to slow down, like we have houses, one that's closing next week, where, like, I swear up and down, like 7 months ago, it would have sold for 300. And now we're at like 245, some bigger drops than others. But I think that there's a lot of people out there that they're still in the lag. Like, they know that's a little bit different, but they don't really realize, like, we're already going here, and you really need to start, like you said, pumping the gas and doing what you're supposed to be doing, because you might wake up in 3, 4, 6 months and, oh my God, where's everybody? I don't have anything pending, you know.
And I think too that the other issue is its mindset, and it's also the media. And I can say this, I worked in the media for 16 years, so I can say this with assuredness of what you see out there a lot of times in mainstream media is not always the case. Okay. A lot of times it's a generalization. Okay. So you've got to be the expert in your market. You've got to be the expert economist in your market, and know what's going on in your market, and make sure that your clients understand that while they may hear of something going on elsewhere, it doesn't mean that that's what's happening in your local market. The other piece too, when speaking with clients or just in general thinking, oh my gosh, it seems like especially residential has just gone in the toilet in 2022. That's not true. That's not true. 2021, guys, you got to think about this. 2021 was an anomaly. Mm-hmm. And we don't know if something like that will ever happen again. It was ridiculous. Let's be honest. It was ridiculous. And so what's happened is in 2022, we've seen this reset. Well, guess what? 2022 is normal. If you look at 2019, not 2020, because that was COVID, the year of COVID, that was off the radar, right? If you go back and look at 2019, we're almost exactly the same as 2022. So all that has occurred is this crazy gangbusters year of 2021 that set these expectations just sky high and out of this world ridiculous. It's now gone back to normal. Okay. However, what happens is when you have the mindset of, oh my gosh, this is all going in the toilet, when it really isn't, and you have all that fear, you have all that scarcity out there, it perpetuates, it breeds, right? And then that just swings everything the other direction. So we're going to see that swing, okay, right? And then we'll get right back to normal again. It's the normal economic cycle. This happens all the time, right? And if you're prepared for it, and if you can get ahead of the curve, then you'll be fine, right? And just put the effort in.
Yeah, I think it's like you said, it's literally we're back to normal. It's hard to remember that sometimes. And it's interesting. Like I'm not one to talk about a lot of like things that we're doing before we actually do them, but like that's been part of my challenge this year, because changing changing from residential to commercial and trying to build up business and learn all these new things. I've been like, I feel like half the year for me has just been like sitting in this room, looking at screens, just trying to call people. And feels like a lonely thing, but it's interesting because like this one project we're working on, I think we'll see. But even with all my conservative projections and all that, like I think that we're going to like make more on this one project than every other house I've ever bought altogether. But it was really hard to like keep it mentally like, I don't know what we're gonna find, but we're gonna find something. Something's got to change. We got to find something. That's been this whole year for me since January. I don't think I sold maybe one or two houses since January. So, and we finally found something and we're able to jump on it. But like you said, it's so important. It sounds airy fairy to say you have to keep focused, and it's, I listen to a lot of positive things every day just to try and keep my mind from like not going off the deep end. And I'm never going to make money ever again, and I'm going to, and I'm whatever. So
and just to be honest, I mean, I'm right there with you. I mean, I have my days. So I mean, I'm not perfect. I mean, I know what has to get done. I know what type of mindset you have to have. But guess what? There are days where I'm just like, this sucks.
Yeah.
And I lost this major deal. I licked my wounds for about 2 weeks over it, and I had said, you know what, I gotta put my big old panties on and get right back on the bus. Let's just keep going. We got to keep going. So you have to have people around you or in your life that can help pull you out of those times, right? Or out of just those days. But you're going to have your days, you will. But all in all, is it ultimately the mindset? It is. And so like yesterday, for example, I had a day where I was having to go through spreadsheets and whatnot with one of my team members, and it started to kind of get me down. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I don't like dealing with this stuff. And I got to, figure it out. And I looked at her and I said, you deal with it, because I can feel my mindset shifting and going in the wrong direction. And if that occurs, then it's going to be other things are going to start to go downhill as well. I said, so I got to keep my mindset right up here. Sometimes maybe up in the clouds, but guess what? When my mindset's up in the clouds, it's amazing how much business occurs, right? Because I'm not worried about it. I'm attracting the success. I'm attracting all the good things. And so, it's sometimes you have the days, and sometimes it is hard to get out of that puddle, but as long as you can recognize it and start working on getting out of it, you'll get out of it. But just know that we're all in the same boat. We all go through it, those ups and downs.
Yeah. So on that note, last couple or questions about your just business. Whether personal or in business, like, what are some of your favorite one or two like systems, like or habits that hey, every day this happens, or like what are some of your favorite activities or systems that keep everything running straight or make your life?
That's a great question.
Broad question, but everybody's got one or two things, Like for me, I put I splurged a little bit. I re-upped my house and put a steam room in. Life changer. 4 or 5, 6 times a week. Being able to it's hard I lay down at night and can't shut my brain off for 30 minutes. And it's very difficult sometimes, but consistently stepping in there without a cell phone and just breathing for 20 minutes and almost, that is one of the things for me that's changed a lot this year. And it's just, it's not, what do you call it? It's not an exact, how much is it working, but I can tell you, that's one for me.
It's self-care. I mean, that's really ultimately what it is. It's self-care. It's so easy for us to get in the grind. I mean, I'm in the grind every single day, but I definitely take the time for myself in the mornings. And people laugh at me because I get up really early, like crazy early, but I go to bed early. So I'm still getting a good night's sleep. But it's having that time, that quiet time just for yourself. And people will ask me, what do you do? Because I'll just be honest. I get up at sometimes 3 a.m. and I work out. I exercise. I love exercising. I love Camp Gladiator. I love being with my friends, working out. That starts at 5 a.m. So I get up 3:30 and honestly just surf the internet. It's stupid stuff. It's stupid. Right? Just mindless. That's why I just have to have something that's mindless. And I have my little energy, my little amino acid drink, and I do that. I go to my workout and I still have time to come back and I do at least some sort of meditation, if not daily, at least 4 times a week, where I just get into my mind and I relax it. And I've learned all these different techniques on how to relieve stress and just put all of that aside, because if you're not clear in your mind, it's going to be very difficult to have clarity throughout your day. So even as something as simple as making your bed, I know you guys have heard a lot of those speeches where you got to start out, make your bed. That's the first thing you have to do. Because what does it do? It sets your day up for success. Because you already have one win. You have one win right there. Get out of bed, make it up, right? One win. Now you can go about your day. Your brain's less cluttered. So I think it's finding that time that little moment where you can have clarity. And there are moments, and this is a true story, where I will go park my car in a random parking lot and just flip the seat back and take a nap for 10 minutes just to decompress. And it's amazing how, as soon as I get out of it, I'll time it or whatever. As soon as I get out of that, I get up and I'm like, I'm ready to go. It's like all engines to go, boop, 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 and I get so much more work done. That's why the Europeans, they've had it right all these years, right? They work to live. They don't live to work like we Americans do. And they have their siesta every afternoon. I get it, because you come back so much more energized. And you're so much more productive when you've had that little bit of nap or a little bit of rest in your mind. So I'm right there with you, Rodney, is that my day has to start out about me. It's me, right? And then the rest of the day is about everybody else.
Awesome. Well said. Is there anything that I should have asked, or maybe that you'd like to share that people should know about you? Or
I just think that I'm just happy that I've had the opportunity to share some of the stories. I think that a lot of times, and I mentioned this before, that we go through our day and we go through our life feeling like we're alone, that we are alone in our struggles. And I think that it's easy to listen or watch someone such as myself who has had a lot of success. And I am at a very great point in my career, but you don't know all the backstory to it, right? You never saw those moments where I wanted to give up many times. You never saw those moments where I had no money, many times had no money, down to like a penny, thinking, how am I going to survive? But it's knowing that you're not alone. And I think it's also just knowing in your heart and just deep down that you believe. Because if I didn't believe in the vision, and if I didn't in my core know that I was meant to be on this earth to make a difference, then I probably would have given up. But it was just that little nagging voice that on those days and those weeks or years or whatever, that I just thought, I don't know how I'm going to survive. I just can't even afford to live. How am I going to do this? It's not asking how, it's just figuring out how to keep just getting that next foot forward and just doing it, because I trusted my instinct enough that I knew that I was on the right path and that I could not stop. I could not give up. And what's interesting is that everything that I've tested out of my life, I always thought I'm gonna do something that makes a difference, right? Kind of on a larger scale, but I never knew what it was. So I tried a bunch of different things. I'm like, no, that's not it. That little voice would still nag me, right? But it was not until I came into the leadership position on the corporate level for Keller Williams, and suddenly all of the things that I learned in my almost 50 years of life, the lessons, the stories, the trials and tribulations, all of that, and the talents, it's like all of it has now come together. It's been an amazing tapestry to watch this tapestry come together, that I finally said, this is it. I don't hear the little voice anymore. Like, I know that I'm meant to be in this role for a reason, and I have to do everything in my power to make the change that's needed to make the real estate industry a better place. And I'm not going to stop. And neither is Alicia Shepard. She and I both, we are sisters from another mister. Like, we are from another lifetime together, or something like that, because we fire like this. It's amazing. But we both have the same vision and mindset, and we are truly unstoppable. So that's why when I talk to groups, I say, look, everything I'm telling you right now, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Because we're not going to make a promise and not keep it. We're going to tell you we're going to do it. We're going to do it. So it's really exciting and an honor to have everybody out there who listened and watched today. And I hope that this was inspiring, and I hope that you are able to figure out your why, why you are here, why you are here on this earth, what your purpose is, and stick to that vision. If you know in your gut and your heart that you're supposed to be somewhere or do something, you will get there. I promise. It may take a while, but you'll get there. So thank you. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. And thank you so much I'm happy you pushed through and have found the leadership position you're in, because I think all the agents, and much more than just the agents in our brokerage, but I think a lot of people are benefiting from that. So last quick question, if someone wants to reach out to you, or if they actually do have a need, or, for your services, what's the best way for people to reach you?
The best way, I do have somebody who now manages my email, which has been amazing to have that leverage, is to email me, because that way it will get seen. If you try to call me or text me, I don't know if I'll ever see it. It's amazing how the messages add up real quickly. So Cynthia Lee at kw.com. It's the easiest way. You can just Google me on the web and you'll be able to find me, but it's my name at kw.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time to spend with me today, and I'll talk to you soon.
Great. Thanks, everybody.